It's your girl Matt Cox here with MA Couture Crafting. And today I am going to tell you the absolute best way to make a bubble quilt. Did I use that technique myself? I didn't. And I will be making another bubble quilt probably at some point because I think the look is so neat and there's so many things that you can do with it. We learned two very large lessons with this. One, you cannot ruffle Minky fabric with your machine. I just don't suggest you try it or do it. It was such a fail. I tried every ruffling method there was because I really wanted to ruffle on my bubble quilt, and it was an absolute fail. It did not work. My husband always says, everything you try works out. No, it does not. And that did not work. And you will see me struggle trying to put a ruffle on this darn quilt. Second lesson, do not do the bubble quilt the way that I do. The best way, here it is, ready? The absolute best way to make a bubble quilt is to do the whole quilt first and then stuff it afterward. Do not even attempt to try to sew rows of full with the polyfill squares together. It's just no point in doing it that way. The best way is to make all of your squares and then sew them together, and then sew actually put your back on if you're going to turn it, put your back on and all of that, and then stuff your quilt and then just whip stitch. I mean, even if, I think I had, what was my quilt, 6x9, so I had like 50 squares. I would have whip stitched those. If I had known what I was in for, I would have whip stitched it. And you just get just a cleaner quilt. You will see as you watch me make this, but again, the best way is to make a full little square and you sew all the edges together, and then you sew all of the squares together, then you sew the rows together. And then I suggest you snip a hole in the back and stuff it. You can get, it's just easier. It would have just been so much smarter. I've seen people make these every which way. I definitely did my research before attacking it, and mine came out because, you know, it works, but no, do not. And this was the best, this is the second best way to make a bubble quilt. But I believe the best way to do it is to completely make your quilt, and before you turn it inside out, go ahead and stuff it, cut a slit in there, stuff it with your polyfill, and then just stitch up the back with some stitches that you'll never ever see, and just make them tight and good, and tie some knots and be done with it. And don't even worry about it. It'll go faster and it'll be so much more even and cute, and you won't be wrestling with your machine, making it angry, trying to sew puffs full of polyfill. It was a mess. I can't believe this actually even came out because it was such a mess. So again, the best way to make a bubble quilt is to make the quilt, then stuff it afterward, stitch it closed, turn it inside out, and be done. And then just close up that corner. But you'll see as I go along, I tell you where I went wrong and what changes I think you should make where, and you'll see why this really is not probably the best method. I've seen it all different ways. I've seen it this way that I actually did it, and I've also seen people stuff both of the squares and then put them right sides together and sew them, and that is probably not the easiest way to do it either. All right, guys, if you are interested to see how I made my bubble quilt and why I say what I say, please keep watching. And if you guys haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. I love interacting and talking with everybody, and I look forward to seeing you guys on my next video. All right, bye-bye. Isn't it so cute, these little books? Oh my goodness, they are basically what inspired this whole project, which I don't do correctly. I think that there is a much better way to do this project. I struggled, but let's do it. Let's go through it. Let's talk about it, and let's see where we could have done some things differently for success. Because this project, yeah, it kicked my butt. So I decided that I wanted the finished squares to come out to be 5 inches. So the one square that I put on top is a 6.5 square. The square that I cut for the bottom is a 5.5 square, 5.5 inch square, because I wanted it to end at 5 inches. So when I calculated, I was like, oh, if I do 5 across, it'll be 50 inches in theory. So I'm using my seam guide gauge right here to do an 1/8, not a full 1/4 inch at this point. I want to do an 1/8. an 1/8 inch seam. So here we go. You take, and the bottom ones, you're not going to be able to see them, so it doesn't matter. Just use your scraps. So you take that big, huge square and you place it on top of the little square and start sewing a little bit. Then you match it up at the bottom and pleat the center, and bam. Nice. And again, I'm sewing about an 1/8 of an inch right now, not a full quarter. And do the same thing to the next side. And pinch it, and bam. Lovely. And then we're going to do it to the third side. Turn it around. No need to lock the stitch. You're going to be going over it with another stitch that's actually a 1/4 inch, so no worries there. Just pinch it up and line it up and just keep sailing. What? And it's just that simple. Now you could sew up that fourth side too, because the way that I think we should do it is just different. They just think we should do this differently, but I'll get to that. I laid it out on the bed because I don't have a design wall. This is my design wall. And I'm laying it out, figuring out which ones I want to go where. So after you sew all these pockets, look at all the pockets. Oh, this color story just brings me great joy. Although my mother swore up and down this was not a boy's quilt, but whatever, Mom. Yes, it is. All those blues and greens. Get out of here. Okay, so then I put a 1/4 inch foot on here. So now I'm going for a full 1/4 inch. So now we're going to put right sides together and we are going to sew this. Now, I think that we should have absolutely sewed up that pocket. So I really think that you should just go ahead and do the same thing on all 4 sides. I'll show you. Just trust me. Let's just keep going, but trust me. So now we're going to sew them together. 1/4 inch seam. You want to try to get on the left of the seam that you've sewn so that you don't see any seams in between. So right here, I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to try to do a 1/4 inch seam. 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. All the way down. And I'm trying to sew to the left of that white line that you already see there. I don't always get it. And because it's puffy, you really won't see it unless you dig for it. But I know, and you know, and it'll be just my luck that it does show. And it's not like I'm using the appropriate colored thread here. I'm just using my piecing color, which is like a silver or parchment. So then when you pull it open, you do not want to be able to see the seams. All right, so now we've got all of these pockets, and all the pockets are the same direction, and we've laid it out. So now look at how that shrunk down. Again, I think you should do the other side too. Close it up completely. I know you're like, but then how do you get the puffing and the stuffing in there? So now it's stuffing time. I liked the Hob stuffing that I used. So going ahead, and I want mine to be pretty full, although it makes life difficult. I want it to be pretty full. I used 2 bags. I had to stop and run and go get another one, but this is where I close it up. Do not use your, see, I don't have my 1/4 inch foot on right now. Use the 1/8 inch again. Use the 1/8 inch for this. If you just sew up all the squares, you could just simply, well, use your 1/4 inch foot just to sew all the rows together. But here I am, I'm stuffing and I'm fluffing and I'm putting the stuff in there as I go along. And then I'm just going to pinch that side and then just sew down the side with 1/8. And I really can't tell you how much to put in here because I just kind of was doing what felt right. And then I stopped and then I stuffed some more. And then this is the very last one that I'm doing, which is stuffed. Now you have this wonderfully stuffed little pocket. So now I'm just fluffing it and playing with it a little bit, making sure that the stuffing is evenly dispersed. I liked this stuffing. There's some at Joann's, but the Joann's one just seemed like it was rough. Now I have to attempt to sew the next row on to some that has already been fluffed. I don't like this. I don't like it at all. It's difficult. I'm trying to match the seams. It is a hot mess, if I'm being 100% honest. It's just not the easiest thing to do. And I've seen this done. I watched so many videos on this puff quilt before I attempted it. And I was like, this is the best way to do it because you're not trying to sew 2 puffy squares together, which is insane. I don't know why they do that. That I cannot do. That's just insane. But it would be so much easier to sew these together if there was no puffy anything in there. And that's what I think you should do. Because right now I am fighting with this. It is hard. My shoulders probably hurt. The next day it was a mess. My edges were not completely lined up where they could have been if I was just sewing flat squares together and stuffing them later, which is what I absolutely say that you do. I say you sew around the entire square, get a bunch of pockets, sew the rows together, sew the columns, sew the rows together after you've sewn each of them together, and then stuff it at the end. That is just the best way to get the cleanest look. Because if you look at some of these joints, I'm like, is it even really closed? I want to stuff it more. I want it to be puffier. I think that would be the best way to do it. But I managed to do it. I fought it. It wasn't fun. I didn't enjoy the process. I was upset the whole way. When I say the whole way, I was just complaining and complaining. But boy, is this a cutie patootie, right? And it's kind of heavy, and I like it. It's just not as well constructed. If you go to like in between those seams, some of them aren't matched up where they could be. I had to go over some seams a couple of times. It's just, no, there's a better way to do it. So this is the very last row, and you do the exact same thing. Sew a little bit, close it up, keep going. And you're trying to sew a 1/4 inch right here. A 1/4 inch. Actually, you want to sew 1/8 of an inch right here. But with all that stuffing, you kind of get what you get at this point. In my mind, I wanted to do a Minky ruffled fabric. I thought that would be the coolest thing ever. However, it didn't work. It was such a fail. I mean, a complete fail. But I'm showing you where I was going. Minky does not behave properly in my sewing machine. It does not ruffle. It does not gather. It just misbehaved. But if you were to want to cut Minky and play with Minky, this is the way to do it. You're going to get some Minky everywhere, but it doesn't have to be as bad as it would be if you didn't know this trick. Cut your strips and put them in a bag immediately. And clean up your area as you're cutting. So I cut that. I will dust off my workspace, and then I will cut another strip and put it in a bag. Take that bag, dump it in the dryer. Just trust the process. I put it on high, and I let it go for about 20 minutes. And do you know it takes all the Minky fluff off of it, so you don't even have to worry about it? So here is where I'm still going for the ruffle. Again, the ruffle does not work. Actually, I'm just piecing this together at this point. This is just me piecing these two pieces together, which is not a big issue. Piecing Minky together works lovely. When you sew the seam, you can't see it because it's hidden by the mink. I'm using my walking foot. Pulled out the big guns for this. It's cool. It's nice. Yay for Minky. Now here's where I try to ruffle it. Oh, it went badly, guys. It went so badly, but I'm taking you guys on this quilting journey with me, and now we know. I even called the Minky people and was like, hey, I see you guys do these YouTube videos. Maybe they'll answer the phone. And she was like, I don't see why it wouldn't work. Yeah, there's a reason. And I don't know that the person who answered the phone is the person who really sews Minky, but it did not work. You're supposed to be able to drop your tension and do a basting stitch and your fabric ruffle. And it does ruffle regular cotton fabric, but that Minky, just trust me, it didn't work. I bought a ruffling foot. I tried it with the ruffling foot. It did not work. Do not try to ruffle Minky. That's what we learn. All right, I've got a panel. We're putting the panel on the backing. This is a Disney panel, and it is, I'm doing the dimensions so that I know how big the panel should actually be. So I'm cutting strips to extend the panel just enough so that it covers. I want this back to be the same as the front, as the puffy stuff. Don't cut it any shorter, any larger, any of that, because we're just going to flip it inside out. So I cut a little bit of black fabric to just run some strips around the panel. And here we are. I thought about actually ruffling this cotton, but I was over it at this point. I thought I was over it. I'm switching feet. I tried, guys. I really thought a ruffle, a black ruffle or the blue Minky ruffle was just going to be so helpful, and it just, the issue with this foot, so this is the ruffle foot. I actually show you guys me trying to ruffle this black fabric with the ruffle foot. The issue was that I could not run both sides folded over so that I didn't have a raw edge. The struggle was real. This ruffle foot though does work. I just can't ruffle with cotton doubled over. So here I am doubling it over and trying. And watch what happens. It ruffles a little bit, but it didn't give me the look that I really was going for. I wanted to ruffle so badly, but it was just such a fail. Look at that ruffle foot go. And it does work on one layer of cotton. It did not work on 2 layers. I tried it every which way, and I just didn't love it. Now this is without it ruffled. So then I thought I'll ruffle one side and then fold it in half. See, it does ruffle. It just, I wasn't loving that ruffle. See it? Nah, nope. Moving on. So I enlarged that back panel. I went ahead and did right sides together on the puff quilt portion. And we're going to sew around the sides with the batting. I made the batting the exact same size. I didn't do any overhang, anything like that. I folded that panel in quarters. We're going to trim the batting. I wanted it, again, the exact same size. Trimming batting is fun. I should have had my larger rotary. So here it is. The puff quilt is face up. The backing is face down. The batting is on the back. This is the point that I would flip this guy over and stuff the back. I would pull the backing from the top and stuff it at that point. If I had done that, this quilt would have been, it would have been darn near perfect because you could have just flipped it and then sewn the edges together and been done. It would have been so much more pleasant. But no, now I'm trying to fight puffing. I'm trying to fight the batting. It's just too much to fight. But you could have sewn your batting and your backing on and then stuffed it. And you would have been sewing just flat layers. You would have thrown your walking foot on and it would have walked right across your fabrics. So if I were doing that, that is the method that I suggest. So now I'm turning it inside out, which isn't as difficult as it looks. I mean, you're going to fight it a little bit, but it's not that bad. Turning it, fighting it, you're going to have to do that regardless, but not the biggest deal. Keep fighting it, keep turning it, fluff, 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 fluff some more, fluff some more, fight it, turn it, and then you're going to do, did I hand stitch it closed? I think I did. I think I did a ladder stitch on the side or a blind hem stitch, which was great. Now we have to hand tie it so that the backing does not come away from the top. So I grabbed a large yarn needle from Hobby Lobby and some pearl cotton, which is right there to the right, some black pearl cotton. I just reached around and went, and I didn't go between every little puff. I went like every 2 puffs, every 3 puffs. So there you see it. I'm going to come up probably in either the yellow or the green. I'm sorry, I'm going to go down. There we go. Go down and pull it and come back up the other side. If you go in at an angle and if you go down at an angle, this large needle works just fine. If you try to go straight, it won't cut through the fabric as nicely. I'm sure they have better needles, but this is what I had. So then you just pull it out and then I double knot it. So I did 2 and then do 2 again and then pull it so that you're not ripping into your fabric. So look right here, you go 1, loop once, loop twice, then pull. And then clip it off. And guys, that's the bubble quilt. I fought that bubble quilt. It was a hard quilt, but we made it. It's done, and now we know how to do it better. All right, guys, see you on the next video.